Here on TalkTV, we are going to bring you footage of the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Forces, having entered the tunnels in Gaza that are being used by Hamas to get children, young children, to move ammunition to the front line where the Hamas themselves, the terrorist organisation, is fighting the Israeli Defense Forces. But we also want to hear from you on 0344 499 1000. Joining me now to discuss this story is former Royal Navy and NATO Commander Rear Admiral Chris Parry. Admiral Parry, thank you for joining us here on TalkTV. We've just been looking at the footage there on the screens of children being used by Hamas in the tunnels under Gaza to transport ammunition to the front line. Surely that is a war crime in and of itself, to get children to assist a conflict in this way.
Yes, it certainly is. I mean, it reminds us of powder monkeys in the warships of the Royal Navy in the early 18th century in that respect. Yes, of course, it's a war crime, any use of civilians or children in this way. But Hamas is defined by war crimes. I think everybody is very busy accusing Israel of war crimes at the moment, but Hamas starts on the basis of war crimes every time it puts fighters into the field.
And up to 170 children have been identified as working in these tunnels. Is there an element of Hamas also using them as a human shield as the Israeli Defense Forces start to get into this huge network of tunnels that Hamas has built under Gaza?
Absolutely. And I'm afraid to say that, Hamas doesn't care how many of these children are killed. It's all grist for their propaganda. I think Golda Meir is famous of saying, the Israelis and the Palestinians will get on when the Palestinians love their children more than they hate the Jews.
As well as the conflict in Gaza, more widely in the region, we're seeing attacks by the Houthi rebels on shipping. The Royal Navy is responding to that. What assets are we currently sending over to keep shipping safe?
Well, HMS Diamond is already there. It's a pretty first-rate air defence destroyer. It's going to be joined, I think, by HMS Lancaster, which is a Type 23, normally anti-submarine frigate, but it's got good self-defence capabilities. There'll be supply ships and other assets being made available. I suspect we've got some Royal Marines going as well. But the primary lead for this is the United States Navy, which has pretty formidable capabilities based on a carrier battle group, and also air defense destroyers are probably the most capable in the world today. So in terms of what's being done, then they'll be there to make sure that merchant ships can go about their business, about their lawful occasions in accordance with international law. I'm afraid the Houthi rebels in what they're doing are just heavily armed pirates. And, if you accept that the sea is the physical equivalent of the World Wide Web, the Houthis are malware and you have to get rid of them.
How serious a threat do they represent? As you describe them quite correctly, I'm sure, as pirates, but this is one of the busiest international shipping lanes. Do they have the ability, despite the huge American presence and the presence of British battleships and frigates, do they have the ability to grind that international highway to a halt?
Not really, no. They're not using the weapons I would use because the ones they've got, which are pretty second-generation anti-ship missiles, some ballistic missiles, which aren't very accurate, and also drones are well within the capability of United Kingdom and United States warships. If you really wanted to seal off the straits there in the Bab el-Mandeb, you'd use mines. Because you don't actually have to lay any, you just have to say you have. And secondly, that's been tried before, back in the 80s, and it worked pretty well in sealing it off. So I hope they don't have a good stock of mines to put in the water.
How concerned are you about reports today about really the hollowing out of the Royal Navy? We're hearing that the Royal Navy has so few sailors, it's having to decommission ships. And Tobias Ellwood, the former chairman of the Defence Select Committee, has pointed out that during the Gulf War, we had 51 frigates and destroyers in service, and that will soon fall to just 16. It seems that we have so few ships and we're asking them to do more and more. Is now a time that the government should be investing in our Royal Navy?
Well, we've had quite a lot of investment, Jake, to tell you the truth. We've obviously got two very large carriers which haven't reached full capability yet. And I'm afraid to say the number of frigates and destroyers have been sacrificed to get those carriers into service. But we shouldn't knock it too much. We've got some of the most capable nuclear attack submarines in the world. We've got our ballistic deterrent at sea right now. And the frigates and destroyers we've got are incredibly good. But you're absolutely right. We're a maritime nation. We have global pretensions and global footprint. 15 of these ships is not enough. And the other issue is, we can't force people to go to sea. The press gang doesn't exist anymore in Portsmouth and Plymouth. So we're going to have to automate more. We're going to have to actually say, look, every person at sea now has to count in human terms. And we must apply technology in order to offset this. I spent my whole life at sea. It's not easy. It's a tremendous privilege to represent your country at international level. That needs to be sold to our young people because it's a great job. And if I were 18 again, I'd do it tomorrow.